So one of the first that we're kind of living through right now is Kamala Harris being the first vice president. And the media has covered her not great. So one of the things that I thought was interesting when I was doing a little research is, like, if you look at the breakdown of how much the media covered her background, not her professional background, but her personal background, 36% of the coverage during the campaign was about, where did Kamala come from? Like, this crazy shit. Tim Kaine and Mike Pence was 5% of their coverage.
Wow.
5% of their coverage. What do we do? Why do they do this? Welcome to Hysteria, chairperson of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, a woman approaching folk hero status in my book, a woman I've spoken in the rain in Iowa with, representing Washington's 7th Congressional District. Please welcome Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal.
Best introduction ever. Thank you. And I remember that rain-soaked day in Iowa.
I mean, is there any other way to be in Iowa? I don't know, but we had a great time. Congresswoman, it has been a long couple of months. And post-Trump, I think a lot of folks thought, okay, we're here, we're good, we made it. But I think the things we thought would be easy have been exceedingly hard, like getting paid leave here in America, for example. So last week here on Hysteria, we tried to go over the great things that the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act would do for listeners. And when you hear the punditry around Build Back Better, it's usually cast as this social safety net, which I think is very confusing to people and not entirely accurate. Can you talk about some of the things you're fighting for in Build Back Better and why we need them so desperately?
Yes, absolutely. And the first thing I will say is people think about the infrastructure bill as the jobs bill, but actually the Build Back Better Act creates way more jobs than the infrastructure bill. I mean, they both are really important, but I think it's important to realize this is also a jobs bill, and it is jobs largely for women and for folks of color, and it benefits so many millions of people across the country. So what does it have in it? First of all, the thing that makes me most excited is universal childcare and universal pre-K. I mean, this is phenomenal. Can you imagine, Alyssa, waking up in the morning and knowing that your childcare costs were cut in half, that most families are not going to have to pay more than 7% of their income on childcare? It is a crippling cost, and it stops people from doing so many things, including stopping a lot of women from going back to work. And so that is one critically important, well, two critically important pieces, because for pre-K, every single 3 and 4-year-old is going to get universal pre-K. Really phenomenal. Also, really important, this has a provision for elder care, $150 billion that will go to making sure that our seniors and our most vulnerable folks with disabilities can actually be at home and looked after through community-based care, home and community-based care in their homes with their loved ones. And there's an 800,000 person waiting list right now for seniors and for those who are vulnerable to be able to get that home and community-based care. This bill will finally take on that giant issue. So that's all within the care economy. Now, paid leave is something you just mentioned. We should have had 12 weeks of paid leave. That is what we started with. That was cut all the way back. Now it's in the House bill at 4 weeks, which is a start. But even that, Alyssa, we're going to have to fight for, because there is somebody in the Senate, one man, who does not want it. And so I am hoping for the women of the Senate to fight for this, and really, men and women, but people to fight for it, because we all know why it's so important and how the United States is one of only 6 countries in the world that doesn't have paid leave, which is so incredibly embarrassing and distressing and destructive to families across the country. So that is also in our bill. Then we've got healthcare. There's healthcare to cut the cost of healthcare for families across the country. There's a number of things. First of all, most important to me, we're finally taking on big pharma. We are going to cut the cost of prescription drugs, not as much as you or I would like, but there is a significant provision that would cap the cost of insulin to $35, that would cap the cost of a few other important drugs. and also would cap out-of-pocket costs. So that's really, really important. Also, we extend the subsidies for both the ACA, but also for states that had Republican governors who were intransigent in not expanding Medicaid. And so we're cutting the cost of healthcare for everyone across the country. Third, we are going to, and this is so important, all of these, by the way, are Progressive Caucus priorities. The third one is climate change. We are going to cut emissions significantly so that we can get to the goals that we've set forward for 2030 and 2050 and take on climate change. But what's really important, Alyssa, is we're doing it, of course, with a $500 billion investment, but by also investing 40% of those funds into environmental justice, what we call the Justice 40. So that means the most disproportionately burdened communities by climate change and the effects of climate change are going to get 40% of the resources, and that includes a civilian climate corps for our young people to really be out there doing good work and saving the planet. Fourth, we are finally going to address housing. This was something really important to us. It is a racial justice issue. It will be the biggest investment in public housing ever in our history, $150 billion to do the repairs on public housing that are desperately needed and to expand the ability to build more affordable housing and to access those units for those who desperately need to get off the streets and into homes. And finally, very important to me, as you know, is the issue of immigration. We are finally going to do something, not as much as we would want but for millions of immigrants, we're going to provide them with a status that would allow them to stay and would allow many of them to get green cards and to ultimately become citizens if they have relatives in the country. So that one, of course, is subject to the parliamentarian, and we're worried about that, but we are going to do everything we can to fight to keep that in.
So that's a lot of stuff that I feel like we could really use to be, I don't know, not the saddest country in the world, essentially. Yeah. Like it's kind of wild when you think about like how the GOP tries to paint this as this like socialist bill when some of this stuff is literally across the globe. I mean, I think paid leave is like what us in Papua New Guinea, that we're the ones that don't have paid leave. So I have heard people talk about Build Back Better as a moral imperative. Do you think passing it is also a political imperative?
I think it's a moral imperative, an economic imperative, and a political imperative. I think it is all three of those things. And we'll start with the political because you asked me about it. And look, I think that what we have to do as Democrats, now that we have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and voters came out in record numbers and not all the same voters as before, right? We had a lot of Black women in Georgia and immigrants in Arizona and suburban moms across the country that came out to deliver us the House, the Senate, and the White House. And we have to do the things that actually make them feel differently about their lives and livelihoods. And the infrastructure bill is amazing. We are going to get roads and bridges and public transit and many other wonderful things out of that. But Alyssa, what good is that road or the bridge if you can't even get out of your house because you don't have childcare? So if there is a way that we can have people wake up and feel differently about their lives, that is what Build Back Better does. And that is what will deliver the votes for us in the 2022 elections and the 2024 elections. People have to see that there is a massive shift in their ability to not just survive, but to thrive. And I think that's what Build Back Better does.
So a lot of the criticism or deflection that we have heard is, oh, inflation. This is going to be terrible for inflation. Is that true?
No, it's not true. And it's really frustrating when people keep talking about inflation because it's mostly the talking heads that talk about inflation. But the reality is, and there's multiple realities. The first reality is my constituents are saying to me, yeah, I'm worried about rising costs. You know what those rising costs are that I'm worried about? Childcare, housing, all of these other things that really decimate my fixed budget that I'm on. And so I think that while we have to pay attention to the economic pain that people are under, and gas prices and the cost of eggs and the cost of diapers, those are serious costs that people are seeing going up. But I think what we have to realize is that Build Back Better is going to cut the cost of childcare in half. It's going to cut the cost of healthcare, the cost of prescription drugs. And so if there are some costs that are going to continue to rise because the supply chain is going to take a while to work through. COVID is going to take a while to work through. The worst economic downturn we've been in recent history is going to take a while to work through. Then what we need to do is deliver cuts in costs in other parts of people's budgets. And that's what we're doing with Build Back Better. Secondly, I think the inflationary hype is a lot of, there is also a rise in wages. And so the actual costs that people are paying that are higher is quite small. I'm not saying, I still think we should care about it, but it's quite small. And I think when we keep hyping inflation as this big fear when it isn't, we just contribute to people's fears about their economic security, whether they're feeling it today or not. And then finally, I think that at the end of the day, if you care about inflation, you should pass Build Back Better. 17 Nobel Prize winning economists and all of the ratings agencies today came out and said that Build Back Better is not going to increase inflation. It's not going to have an inflationary impact. In fact, what it does is it invests in building our economy, in getting more people back to work, and in making sure that our economy is continuing to grow and thrive.
So it seems also like very positive information that we could use about the Build Back Better bill. So here's maybe it's a catty question. I don't know. How bad is it in the halls of Congress? Is there as much drama as we see? And I'm putting that in air quotes. Or is a lot of it being manufactured by the media because they love a food fight? Are the Democrats in disarray, or is negotiating actually just part of doing business?
Negotiating is just part of doing business. And I think the 24/7 news cycle really sort of, it looks for and feeds on any small thing that's happening. And most big negotiations don't take place in public. And yet all of our negotiating is taking place in public. And, everyone's hanging on everyone's little word and press conference and this and that and the other thing. And instead of talking about, and that's why I've been so, I've been very disciplined about always wanting to talk about what's in the bill, because it's not about some top line number. It's about what is in the bill and how do we talk about that rather than the process or the number. And so I really don't think that it is as bad as people say. I do think that there are, when you have very slim margins, and you have a wide diversity of opinions and districts, you are going to have some differences. And we all are working to come together and to build trust and to overcome those differences. And I think that's what I'm very proud of the Progressive Caucus for. We have not criticized I have been very disciplined about not criticizing anyone, because at the end of the day, we need 50 senators. And we need 218 votes in the House, and we don't have margins. So we do have to recognize that you push as hard as you can, you leave nobody behind, and you get the best possible deal you can for the American people. And I think that's what the Progressive Caucus has done. And this week we will vote out Build Back Better out of the House, just as we said we would. And I think that will be a huge boon for the country.
Well, Pramila, if I can call you Pramila, because I'm sorry, but we're friends now. We're friends now. If this is a time of year to be grateful, let me please just say that I am grateful for people like you who are fighting for those who are in the greatest need. Thank you for coming. Julissa, have you ever been the first to do or achieve something?
Yes, many things. I was the first person in my family to go to college in the U.S. As far as I know, I was the first person to work undocumented on Wall Street. Many first, I think.
You bad bitch. Today we're going to talk about being first, why we're great, why they suck, and joining us first, she's a stand-up and podcast host. You can listen to I Love a Lifetime movie that she hosts with Naomi Ekperigin and her new pod, Megan Fun of Sports. And she'll be performing at Helium Comedy Club in Indianapolis on November 24th. It's Megan Gailey.
Hi.
Next up, she's an activist, writer, executive producer, many varieties of pepper depending on the day. It's Grace Parra.
I'm feeling pretty spicy in terms of pepperage today. I'm feeling crisp as well, like crisp pepper.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, a crisp pepper.
You did come on here like it was
Hot.
3 p.m.
We were-
I'm like, it's early.
Grace, have you ever been a first?
Okay, so I have a story for you guys today because
I love it when you bring a story.
I was so excited about this topic because it's very, very near and dear to me, very personal. Certainly some firsts on a sort of local micro scale, like the first gal in my family. I guess not in the entire family, but like I'm the only girl. I only have brothers. The first lady in my family to go to an Ivy League university. Some wonderful things there. But there was a point 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I was developing a show at name unknown cable. It was TBS. What am I trying to be coy? It was a show at TBS. It was an amazing opportunity, and this is not an indictment on them at all. By the way, they were great. But the show was a late night show that would have, had it gone to series, made me the first Latina to have a late night show on a cable network or a streamer. And then, I'm talking on the scale of like a John Oliver or Sam B or an Amber Ruffin, something like that. And it was a very exciting time in my life. It felt like it was a sort of, something, a pinnacle would have been reached had it happened. And it didn't happen. But I found a great therapist. So it all worked out great. But I realized that at the time, part of what was enticing to me and exciting about the prospect was to be the first to achieve this thing. However, in retrospect, I really feel like I have gone from wanting to be a first to feeling like I don't want to be the first and only. I want to be one of like 10. Because
totally.
In order to really feel like you don't necessarily have the pressure of so many different voices and so many different potential audience members in this case, with the weight of the responsibility to represent all these different people on your shoulders, you get to carve a niche for yourself. And you get to be completely independent and think not, okay, I am representing all Latina voices because I'm the only person who has a show on air, but instead to focus on what I can bring to the table that's, unique and nuanced to my experience. I will say, however, what is super fucked up is that as soon as we found out the pilot wasn't going to series, I was like, well, good luck to whoever gets it. And now it's 2022 almost, and there still has never been a Latina in late night. So that is what's infuriating, when there is the potential for you to be the first of something, and then years go by, and not only were you not the first, but nobody was. That's fucked up.
I agree with that. That's fucked up. Megan, what about you?
When Grace mentioned therapy, I was like, I think I was the first in my family to go to therapy. And
breaking barriers.
That's a big step for an Irish Catholic family. And I was the first girl on my dad's side in 62 years, which is a really long female drought.
Wow.
But everyone else has done really impressive things. But I do think with it does come, even on that like small family level, it does bring a lot of scrutiny. And my grandmother was definitely way harder on me than she was my cousins who came afterwards. And that's just like a microcosm of what Grace was sort of saying in a larger picture of like, yeah, you just bring, Kamala's a great example. It's like, it was so exciting. And I posted a picture when they, clinched the election. And over the past few weeks, people have been going and commenting on that photo again, being like, yeah, but isn't she doing such a shitty job now?
Oh, God.
And like finding it in my feed to drag her. And I don't really know if that would be happening. The first female vice president I ever saw was on Veep, so it's like fictional before it became a reality. Yeah. And now with this story coming out, you do see it. It feels very difficult and biased and unfair in a lot of ways.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the first that really excited me was when I was 8 years old. And it was when Geraldine Ferraro, and it goes to what everybody always says, when you see it, you feel like you can be it, right? And when they made Geraldine Ferraro the Democratic vice presidential nominee in 1984, I just remember being so excited. And then I went back last summer during the election, because Pfeiffer and I did a podcast on picking a vice president. And I went so deep into that summer, the summer of Ferraro, when she was campaigning. And it's so funny because my memory was just so excited. Like I could remember without looking at any magazines, the outfit she was wearing when they held up hands in the Minneapolis State Assembly. And you go back in time and they were awful to her. They were terrible to her. It was the first time they were like, what's her husband do? And why is she a bitch? And the media caused a stir between she and Barbara Bush, saying Barbara Bush had called her a bitch. And it was like, to go back and read it. But the funny thing is that embedded in that first was another first, which I thought was kind of funny. Not funny, but crazy. One of her biggest advisors at the time was Barbara Mikulski, who went on to be U.S. Senator from Maryland. Barbara Mikulski was the first woman elected to the Senate on her own right. All the other women had replaced dead husbands.
Oh,
and
wow.
In 1993, you guys think about this.
Oh my
I was
God.
nearly graduating. No, this is the 93 part. 1993, she was like, you know what? She got all the other women in the Senate and Senate staffers to wear pants, because pants were not allowed. And so it was called the Pantsuit Rebellion. And she said, when I walked on the Senate floor in pants, it caused quite a stir. You'd have thought I was walking on the moon. So she made it okay for women to wear pants. So that is my favorite first, which upon retrospect was actually kind of fucked up. Julissa, what's your favorite first?
I feel like I'm still waiting for what will be my favorite first, which is when, we have the first Latino president.
Yes.
When we have the first Latino, for the first Latina Oscar winner for director, for best picture. Like, I'm still waiting for so many firsts, which is kind of what you were talking about, how exciting firsts are, but also how sad they are, right? Like when I think about like Justice Sotomayor, like I was so excited when she became the first Latina Supreme Court justice. And I'm sort of sitting here wondering how long it's going to take to have another one. Or like when I think about like the Golden Globe, like I think America Ferrera was the first Latina to win a Golden Globe. And then it took many years for then Gina Rodriguez to win one. And then we haven't had one since. And so I just think that it takes too damn long it takes too long to get to that first. And then it takes still a really long time for there to be a second and a third and a fourth, etc. So I think, as exciting as firsts are, they're also reminders of how far behind we are in like every area of society. And when I mean we, I mean Latinos. We're just so far behind, like everywhere. And that doesn't mean that I'm not happy when it happens. And I try to remind myself that moment is special and I should celebrate it and I shouldn't be bogged down by everything else it means. But yeah, I have a mixed relationship with firsts because of everything they tell us.
Right. Well, look, Geraldine Ferraro was 1984 and we finally got Kamala Harris in 2020.
Jesus Lord.
Megan, what's your favorite first?
Gosh, I was like listening to Julissa, I was thinking of Coco and how much I loved Coco and how angry I was when they had that weird Olaf short before it.
Oh, yeah.
And how there was like good backlash, people being like, why did you have to put this like snowman? There's nothing whiter than a snowman.
Yes.
Before this, in school, I did projects on Arthur Ashe, I loved tennis and he was just so remarkable. And seeing Serena and Venus follow in what has been brutal footsteps of his. And I loved Barbara Jordan, who became, I believe, the first woman elected in Texas to represent on a U.S. level, and I cut a Barbie's hair to be Barbara Jordan.
Oh my gosh.
Put like a little outfit on her and made my own Barbara Jordan that I think is like the only Barbie that my mom has kept of mine.
That's so cute. Barbie Jordan. That's awesome. I have one. Okay. It's pretty recent, actually. It was J-Lo and Shakira doing their halftime show at the Super Bowl. First, I mean, I lost my shit because I love both those artists very much. Second, of course, for there to be not one but two Latinas leading the Super Bowl halftime show, and for it to be just them. You know, they're not backup. They're not like, you know, one of 14 different artists. It's them. It's their songs. They have great Latin American artists who are backing them up, like J Balvin. I thought it was fantastic. And there was a period right before I was pitching this show that I'm working on right now, this pilot that I'm working on, where in order to like amp myself up, I would rewatch that clip of that Super Bowl halftime show over and over again, because it got me excited. There was something that was so visceral about there being two Latinas on stage together. Also, those two artists who I don't think had really performed together before. So it was huge. And I know, like, I mean, you know, Megan, you mentioned this, that the sports world is like nuts right now. And it feels strange to love, you know, the NFL. Well, whatever. I do like football, but you know, it's a halftime show. There's in the NFL in general, like there's a corporate powers that play there kind of messed up. But that show made me really excited. I was very happy to support it. And I still think about it.
That's one, Grace, that reminds me of everything we're talking about, right? Which like, I was like, had to tune out all of the negativity around them performing, right? Because there was a lot of controversy about like how many Black artists had declined during the Super Bowl, and then it's like, here's these two Latinas, and why aren't we standing in solidarity? And like all those things are true, but I also wanted to be like, can I have this moment?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Like, can I please sit here and just be like so excited for them? Because
yes,
you know, I followed J-Lo on social media, and like she was, I mean, I don't know her at all, but it felt like she was genuinely so happy and excited, and like on the brink of tears, like a culmination of her amazing career. And I was like, I just want to be happy for her and for us. And like, can we go back to like, can I not be an activist for one halftime show?
Yeah.
You know, can I just be an spectator?
Good. Like
It
that's
was.
the thing.
So
It's like,
good.
and people
The
people still
halftimes have
found-
sucked.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it was Maroon 5 before.
Jesus.
And I'm like, to me, it was even crazy that it's like we could have just Shakira or just J-Lo. They got enough bops. They got enough hits. They are mega stars. But it was like, oh, we have to put two women together to equal what one Maroon 5 is. Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out. I mean, it was really the most energetic, wonderful halftime show. I've definitely watched it more than once.
I watched it during COVID once a month.
Gonna go watch it after we're done recording.
Let's
You know what? We're going to put it in show notes. We're going to put it in show notes so that everybody
so
can
good.
watch it because
Yes.
they should.
Well, I will leave this for you guys to discover too when you go to YouTube and watch it and look at all the comments. But the number one comment, and what stuck with me always, is something like, I feel like such a proud Latina, and I'm a white dude. Everybody walks away feeling so much Latina pride. You're gonna love it, guys. You're gonna love it.
I contend that men should not perform at the halftime show because
Interesting.
I have seen Madonna kill it, Beyonce,
Lady
Katy
Gaga.
Perry, Lady Gaga, and then men, they're just not. Even Justin Timberlake, I saw him live. It was terrible, and he's
Yeah.
at least a dancer. Men should not do it. They can be background.
The only male act I recall as being memorable, I think, was Aerosmith.
Yes.
Yeah, and Prince.
Remember?
Prince is
Prince,
famous.
did
Right.
Prince ever do the
Yes.
Super Bowl? Right?
Prince played in the
Prince.
rain, like played Purple Rain in the rain, and that was the
right,
Super
right,
Bowl the
right.
Colts won.
Also, I think Aerosmith had Britney Spears backing.
They
backing
did.
them.
Also, how did this become a Super Bowl halftime show?
You know what? Tangents are necessary. Okay, Grace. What is it about high-profile firsts, like, say, the election of Barack Obama, that make it so rare for there to be seconds close behind?
Oh, I think that, there's a bit of a novelty. People feel real proud of themselves, especially when they have a hand in being able to, let's say, for instance, elect Barack Obama. They feel like, okay, our work here is done. And then they take their foot off the pedal, basically. And we stop feeling like it's a consistent battle. We feel like we've done our work for the day and we can go home. And that's when you know that there's a little element of the work that's gone into that first happening that is performative. And that's what's really frustrating, that it doesn't always feel like it's genuine. after that first has happened, or rather that maybe the effort for there to be a first was genuine, but the effort for there to be a continual stream of, of people filling those positions of talent in that particular area, it feels fraught. It feels like it's just more hollow. And I think that comes from a place of, giving little tidbits, chipitos. Is that a word that you guys use at home, Julissa? Because my mom uses like little cheepies. She said, I think she made it up. I don't think it's real.
I think she made it up.
But she'll say like cheepies is like just, you give somebody a little crumbs basically. And it
like
feels
Greg Sprinkles?
Greg Sprinkles. Exactly.
They're Greg Sprinkles.
It's like Greg Sprinkles is what we get, and we're supposed to be happy with that. But the reality is that it's not enough for there to just be a first. I think we've all kind of insinuated that for various reasons. But yeah, that's what's frustrating about it for me.
You know what? It also, I think something that's at play here is that because this person is the first, we expect them to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And when they aren't perfect, because nobody can be perfect, then we put any of their mistakes on an entire community. And then we say, well, look what happened when we had a Black president. Look what happened when we had, a Latina whatever. And then people are reluctant, I think, to have a second because they put all of their mistakes on that whole entire community. And I think that's bullshit because, white men are allowed to make mistakes left, right, and center every single day of their lives, and there get to be many of them. And so I think that is something that we need to like break down the cycle of how long it takes to get a second.
I also think we have a tendency to just go back to that well that gave us the first. Like when you hear people be like, Michelle Obama should run. And it's like, first of all, she would be incredible. Second of all, they've given enough. We don't have to go back to the Obama family. Like we can find other women and other Black people in other places. And this happens in Hollywood a lot. Mm-hmm. And it happens in politics. It's like, maybe it shouldn't be 4 families running the country all the time. We should
Megan,
spread it out.
You're so right to bring up the fact that this happens in entertainment all the time. We've talked about In the Heights pretty consistently, here on Hysteria. I know other crooked pods as well. It meant so much for so many people. It had to be so much to so many different types of Latinos. And you realize we're not a monolith. One movie cannot make all of us happy. It shouldn't be, there shouldn't be that much pressure on any one piece of art. There should be 10 in the Heights. Yeah. There need to be 20 of them so that yes, exactly. So that Lin-Manuel can do what he does and the weight of the world isn't on him. Now, I do think there were some casting issues there for sure. But, and I'm glad that there were certain things that were brought up. But I feel like it wouldn't have been so emotionally horrifying for so many people if there had been other Latino-led major studio movies out at any given time.
So what firsts have we not seen? And who do we want to see be the first? I'll go first. I want there to be a lady president. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd like it to be Katie Porter because I think she could literally take anybody down. It is like, I want someone who is, I also think that when I think about Katie Porter, I also think about Stacey Abrams because I think they have very similar characteristics in that they're utterly unfucking flappable. And I mean, it's like, could you imagine what Katie Porter does to oil executives and anyone in Congress? And like, I don't know, did you guys see the video she did where she was taking down the oil guy and telling him they didn't need more land leases? And she opened up the trunk of her car and was like, see all these bags of rice? Well, every grain of rice represents an acre of the land you already own. And I was like, this bitch she almost couldn't be defeated is how I feel. I mean, of course she could, but she couldn't. So Katie Porter to be president, I think is mine. Megan?
Oof. I would love for there to be and I know this has happened, but it's been so long and it's been so many white men. I would love for there to be a female late night host on a major network. And I nominate Grace or myself.
Yes.
Or Naomi Harrigan. Or Michelle Collins or Quinta Brunson. There's like,
give me Akilah.
Yes.
Give me a tequila.
There's so many. And the fact that we've got just all men named Jimmy right now, you know,
Dude.
it's like there's not even a variation in the name or the tone of the skin. That to me is just like maddening.
Okay, I got two for you. One, I'm going to echo my friend Julissa here. I'm ready for a Latino president. It will happen in our lifetimes. I am ready. I'm excited. I feel like it's going to change a lot because I think once we have a Latino president, we're going to see other Latino first. It's going to be a ripple effect, you know? It's unfortunate that it feels like it has to start with the executive branch, but I do feel like we'll see excellent ripple effects. The other that I'll say though is I would like for there to be a time where there is the first time with multiple Latin American family comedies on networks and streamers. I don't want there to be one just on ABC or NBC or CBS, but each of them should have their own. You should be able to go to Amazon and find a Modern Family that's, Latino centric, that's different from what you'll see on Apple that has a similar show, because every single type of family comedy that's of the, Modern Family ilk will be told about a different kind of Latin American family. There's just so many different variations within. The problem is when there's only one and that one is forced to be everything to everybody. So that I think will spell a huge shift for us.
Julissa, do you have any other firsts you'd like to see?
I mean, everything Grace said. I add a +1 to that. This is going to sound different, but I'm still waiting for Mexico to win its first World Cup.
Yes!
And given the way that we have played recently, we lost to the US, we lost to Canada. I'll just be happy if we make it to the World Cup this year. But I do really hope that in my lifetime, Mexico wins a World Cup. That's what I am sitting here hoping and waiting for.
And I think there's going to be a female head coach in one of the major 4 leagues.
Yes.
10 years.
Yeah.
Becky Hammon is going to get the next job. I believe it.
The Spurs are going to have the first female NBA coach because that's how the Spurs do. Go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs. Do you guys think, so one of the first that we're kind of living through right now is Kamala Harris being the first vice president. And the media has covered her not great. So one of the things that I thought was interesting when I was doing a little research is, like, if you look at the breakdown of how much the media covered her background, not her professional background, but her personal background, 36% of the coverage during the campaign was about, where did Kamala come from? Like, this crazy shit. Tim Kaine and Mike Pence was 5% of their coverage.
Wow.
5% of their coverage. Like, the media for Kamala, it was all about her ancestry and not about her achievements and accomplishments. What do we do? Why do they do this? Why does the media, why are they obsessed with taking a first and trying to sort of, they take a first and it's like a pie, and then they slice the pie up the way they want. And it's not ever really helpful to the person who is being the potential first. Grace, what do you think?
It's about trying to identify her, to create a vocabulary around this thing that has not existed before because it's so unfamiliar. It's, so in order to do that, you break it down to its most base parts. And it's like, come on, guys. We all saw, Megan, I think you mentioned Veep. Somebody mentioned Veep. It's like, you've seen it. We know what it's like. It's not that hard to imagine a woman being a vice president. But because it's the first time that it's officially happened, it feels so novel. Why it's done, I don't, I guess that's why. What we can do to avoid it. I mean, I don't know. You know what's tricky about this example is that the position of being a vice president, at some points it's been so meaningful and has meant so much. And vice presidents historically have, in some cases, been very useful and utilitarian. And then sometimes there's just sort of like a stand-in kind of, and they haven't really done that much. And I think what's tricky is there are people who feel like that's what Kamala is, when the reality is that she is so capable and she's so very, ready to be there that I hate seeing people break her down like that. But the position of VP is one that's sort of been, fraught with that binary.
Totally.
I think there's a need too to they think they need to humanize these people to us. And so they get sort of these borderline human interest stories about where they came from. And you kind of saw it with Buttigieg too, of like, oh,
Good
wow,
point.
how
Yes,
did a
Good
gay
point.
man get here?
It's a really good
like,
point.
People that are not used to seeing gay people or women or people of color in positions of power need to be spoon-fed it. And I actually don't think they do, but I think it's the media's tendency to spoon-feed it in a way that's like, how do we make this palatable for my almost 70-year-old parent? You know, like it's a like dumbed down version when it's like, just give people that they're the candidate. And if they want to know how they got here and what their background is, have Oprah do it. Or, you know, have someone else and have it not be part of their political coverage.
Well, and you're right, Megan, because the coverage of Kamala started, much as Mayor Pete's did, around their announcement to be president. Right. And so it's like Kamala's just continued once she had been selected as VP. But you're totally right. They were two firsts. And the way that the media talked about them was like what my friend Caroline Chang used to call a hairbrushing. It was like, we're just going to tell you what we think you should know. Julissa, what do you think?
You know, I think that when it comes to like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris and the scrutiny about where are they really from, I mean, that's just xenophobic racism, trying to discredit that this people are in fact American, that they're even eligible to be in these positions of power. And it's unfortunate. You know, I also think that, you know, going back to the whole thing about how difficult it is to be a first, because everybody's expectations is on you. You know, I think both with Kamala and Obama, people were disappointed that it was them and not someone who was a more progressive Black person, right? And like I agree to some degree, but I also think it's important that they're the first, and it's important that that glass ceiling has been broken. Because then we can have, you know, a more progressive version of them and even a more progressive version of them. And they don't have to be everything to everybody. But yeah, I think that, you know, when you can't scrutinize somebody's work, then you go and scrutinize their person.
That's a great point.